Take away all me. Ain't no past when I'm rolling this free.
Hey guys, welcome back to Exotic Visionaries. So, I just want to go ahead and announce that this will be the last voiceover. Once this topic is finished and we head on to the next topic, I will be going back to my visual lives on YouTube. So just stay on the lookout for that. Um, I'm not too sure whether I want to start a podcast or not. I think I'm going to try to keep on building the YouTube and building the whole platform. And then once I get finished building that, then we can try to go back into the podcast because this was really fun, you guys. But it's time for me to go back into, the visual lives on YouTube. So you guys, know that this is not all AI visuals, but there is an actual human behind it. Anyways, so this next topic that we were discussing is gods versus humans and what's the real difference. Everybody talks about gods like there's something completely separate from humans. And I never really kind of understood the whole picture thing with that concept. Is it something higher, something untouchable, something far beyond us? But what if the difference between God versus humans isn't what we've been taught? But because, listen, when you really think about it, what makes something powerful? Is it strength? Is it knowledge? Is it awareness? Is it control? Because throughout history, people who understood more or who even saw more and who operated differently were often viewed as something greater than humans. You get what I'm saying? And not because they were magical, but because they moved differently than everyone else around them. So, for instance, like, how people who tapped into their God-given abilities, you know, they're looked at like different. Think about the movies that they came out with, Superman and Spider-Man and all these different other superheroes. Behind the mask, these people were actual humans. So that's the difference. It's created perception because most people live unconsciously. So if you're living unconsciously and then you decide to wake up and you really just doing the same thing every day, the same routines, the same distractions, and the same habits, most people react instead of thinking. They follow instead of questioning, and they consume instead of understanding. And it becomes different once you become aware. When someone starts thinking deeply, when they start moving with intention, and they start controlling themselves instead of being controlled, they naturally start to fall apart from the crowd. And everything that stands apart gets labeled. Sometimes people call it wisdom, sometimes they call it power, and sometimes they call it the divine. But maybe the real difference isn't gods versus humans. Maybe the real difference is awareness versus unawareness, because awareness changes everything. Like I've been saying, the more aware you become, the more control you gain over yourself. And once you start to gain control over yourself, you gain control over your thoughts, you gain control over your emotions, you gain control over your decisions and your directions. And most people, when you think about control, the next thought or the next thought that comes with that is going to be power. So when you think about control, you think about power. And not because power is something that's handed to you, but it's something that's developed. It's something that comes with discipline. So when you control how you think and you control what you're eating, it eventually you start to get disciplined. Like instead of going and getting a burger, you go and get a salad. And that's what they call discipline. And through discipline, through understanding, and through learning yourself deeply enough, you'll eventually stop moving unconsciously. Most people aren't controlled by the things listen. Most people aren't controlled. They're just controlled and they don't know it. They don't even understand that their environment around them is controlling them. Their distractions, like the TV, the cell phone, from day one I've been talking about this, and every topic coincides with one another. You have these people that are constantly on their phones. They don't think about the world that's around them, and those are distractions. And the people that let emotions control them, they let their habits control them. But when you don't control yourself, everything else is going to control you. So if you become aware of that, everything's going to start to shift, and you're going to start paying attention to your thoughts, your patterns, and your actions. And you stop moving automatically. Like, you stop moving like a robot, and you start moving with intention. And intention is divine. That's godly. That's why they say, oh, you're God, or you must got special powers, and this, that, and the third. And that's when the real transformation starts to happen. And so it's not something above human, but it's something more conscious, more disciplined, and more aware. The more that we start to understand ourselves, the harder it's going to be for the world to understand us, or the world to even control us. And that's what people start to get mistaken for being godlike. It's not perfection and it's not magic. It's just mastering yourself, controlling yourself, and being aware of yourself. Because someone who starts to control themselves, they start to move differently from people that's being controlled by everything else that's around them. And once we start understanding that, we stop searching for the power that's outside of ourselves, and we start building the power that's inside of ourselves. So the real question isn't, are gods different from humans? The real question is, how aware are we of
Ain't
our
no
own potential?
past when I'm rolling this free. Just yeah. Black top shimmer when the sun dip low. I don't chase time, I just let it go.